What is going on, my dudes and dudettes? It's Sean here with Asna Serpentarium, chilling in my reptile room. It is absolutely boiling in here, which is a good sign really, because I spent a fortune insulating this place. But anyway, today we're just going to have a little chat about substrate, as you can see by the title. So substrate then, guys, is the sort of bedding that you use in your snake's enclosure. You can use a variety of different types of substrate. There's lots and lots available. But before you decide on what substrate you use, what you need to do is you need to smash that like button. No, you need to know what species it is and what the care requirements are of that particular species. So if it's a dry sort of snake, like a sand boa, a rosy boa, a warmer python, and you obviously want to avoid substrate that holds humidity, and you want to go for something loose shifting for the most part, like aspen. There's a few different dry substrates about, or you could even go shredded paper, newspaper, but it doesn't have that burrowing feature that we talked about earlier. But it's nice and easy to clean, so that's an option for you. There's another option then, if you've got something that needs a bit more humidity and stuff like that. You can use cocoa fiber or cypress mulch, anything like that, that's nice and wet but not soaking it, it's got a lot of water in there, keeps that humidity up where it needs to be. And what that does then, guys, with the right humidity, it stops the snake from actually getting respiratory infections because the humidity is too high or too low, and it makes sure that the shed comes off nice and cleanly every time, and that is what you want ultimately. So substrate is quite important, as most of you know. A lot of my snakes I keep on paper, and the rest then are kept on aspen. The reason I do that is because with my royals I find it easier just to keep them on paper, keep it nice and simple. I just give it a spray down when they're shedding, keep the water bowl nice and full. They've got nice big water bowls they can have a soak in if they want to. And then the dry loving species, or like the medium sort of dry loving species and the burrowing species that I've got, I keep on like an aspen type bedding. I don't even know if it is aspen off the top of my head. I think I might be saying it wrong, but it's like a loose shifting wood based substrate. It is safe for snakes. I bought it at the decent pet shop that's local to me, and that gent knows his stuff. So I told him what substrate I wanted, and he just gave it to me in a sort of unnamed bag. So I don't fully know what it is, but it is reptile safe. He uses it himself, and like I say, he is a sound bloke. So yeah, that's what I use for like the dry sort of loose shifting substrate realm for like my rosies and stuff like that. What you could also do as well, if you've got like a high humidity loving species of snake, like a rosy boa, no, not a rosy boa, a rainbow boa, what you could do is you could, as an adult this is though only, you could keep it on paper, nice big water bowl, and then have a nice big humid hide as well, and fill it up with sphagnum moss, spray that down, and it's pucker. And what that'll do then is it'll give it a temperature gradient and a humidity gradient as well, if that makes any sense. So if it's feeling like it needs more humidity, it'll go in the hide box or in the water. It'll soak up all that much needed humidity, and then it'll leave, and it's got slightly less humidity then in the surrounding area, but I wouldn't want that humidity to be too low, just sort of like a normal sort of level for that species on the lower end, so if that makes any sense. So say now if the advice is to keep the humidity between, I don't know, say 50 and 70%, what I would do then is have the rest of the enclosure at that 70%, and then have that humid, sorry, the 50%, not the 70%, at the lower end of the spectrum, and then have the humid height be a little bit above it, so then it's got all of the options then of how much humidity you want. So that's another option rather than just using the cypress mulch on the whole thing. Yes, there are lots of different options with substrate. Definitely though, guys, whichever substrate you buy, heat treat it or freeze it first. What that'll do is it'll kill off any mites that are lingering on the substrate. I normally stick mine in a freezer for 2 weeks before I use it, so you can get all sorts living in the substrate. And if you put it in the freezer or heat treat it, you're not going to have that sort of issue. But obviously, if you're heat treating or freezing, make sure that it's the right temperature before you go chucking it into the snake's enclosure. You don't want to chuck boiling hot or freezing cold substrate into the snake's enclosure, because that's just going to cause all sorts of problems. So just leave it settle overnight at around 80 degrees, and then you can then add it into your snake's bin. And then what you can do then, if you've got a nice full bed of substrate, when it poops, just scoop it out. Okay, just scoop that little area out. Ruffle the rest of the thing over so it's nice and level, and when the level drops a little bit or it's a little bit too dirty, like all over the place, then you just empty the whole thing out and replace the substrate completely. Obviously you give it a nice squirt with F10 to keep all the bacteria levels and stuff down. Oh, and that's another tip as well. When you've got your humid species, what I like to do is I like to add some F10 into my spray bottle, and what that does then is it stops so much bacteria growing on the substrate and stuff, and you don't get any mold and stuff then, because the F10 in the humidifying bottle kills it all basically, and it stops anything like that happening. Another substrate you could use, you could go Bioactive. I've never actually kept a Bioactive tank in my collection. It's not something I'm about really. It seems a little bit well, how can I say this without upsetting anyone? For some species you need it, I can understand that. But for a lot of people, it's a bit like they're doing it to show off. That's what it seems like to me. I mean, you know, the first thing out of their mouths a lot of time is, oh, I keep mine Bioactive, you know, and I'm not really about that. All right, you know, you don't see me running around saying, oh, I keep my, you know, my rosy boas on Aspen, and that's the first thing out of my mouth. Like, do you know what I mean? So, you know, it seems to be a bit of a trend at the minute, which is fine. There are a lot of pros to it. Obviously, it's more naturalistic. You don't have to clean it out, which is that's pretty cool. But at the same time, you know, if you've got a bigger snake and it's got big poops, then that poop is going to linger a long time before any termites or anything can actually break that down. So I don't know about that one. It's not for every species and it's not for every keeper. For me, I'd rather keep everything nice and simple and sanitary, and just give them enrichment in the enclosure without having any bugs or anything like that in it. And obviously as well, guys, if you keep in, you know, bugs and stuff like that in it to break down the feces, it can be really easy to either mistake them for mites, or if you've got mites, not see the mites because you think it's just the bugs that are supposed to be in the tank. So, you know, there's a lot of things you got to bear in mind when you go in Bioactive. It's not for me, as I've said, but you know, I can see why people want to do it. And for some species, it is necessary to do that. But as always, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video and learned something new. If you've got any questions at all, make sure to comment down below, and I'll definitely answer you. Do your research on what species you've got and what substrate is best for it. As always, these are just some options that I've thrown out there. This isn't, you know, advice really per se. This is just me, you know, thinking out loud type of thing, and discussing it with you, what sort of options you've got. But it is all species dependent, and what works for you may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for you. You know, each to their own. Everyone's got different setups, everyone's got different opinions, and that's fine. That really is fine, you know. So I hope you've had some entertainment and you've learned something from watching this video. If you're new around here, guys, make sure you subscribe, smash that like button, destroy that notifications bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.